Hey guys, this will be a review of Rest Calm by Barras, our Finnish map maker. This map was submitted to the Challenge 1 of the TeamLiquid Map Contest 12 and achieved like a very nice spot in the finalists. Many of the map makers aren't particularly fans of it because the fact of the mineral walls only interact with the players very comparatively late in the game, and it can be like ignored outright in other certain games, especially like in more aggressive ones. But it is still like players consider it still like a fairly solid finalist. The other judges. When it comes to this, when it comes to the map itself, as to begin doing like some general, nope, it's the vertical ones. The center of the map, especially these high grounds, I don't consider them to be like particularly interesting because they are like so open and so direct and allow too much movement. Therefore, I think that something like this will indeed like very much help. When it comes to the center of the map itself as well, in order to like further accent this pathway, this will be done and accent it even further the very tight center. When it comes to the map itself, it has like a couple problems that I think should be like very much addressed. The first one is that the natural and some map makers will like over this because I consider it to be like problematic, but it doesn't matter. This natural should be pushed like further back, probably even slightly more, something like this probably. That can be fixed. All of that can be like filled with dots in order to assure that those siege tanks can reach the town hall and that this area can't be like overly abused. In order to like fulfill the pushing back of that area, the main ramp can be like obviously just be pushed back slightly. It doesn't need to be like 3 sides, maybe something like that, or maybe make it 3 sides, size 3, something like into that, because at the moment it is also lacking an overlord pod. Obviously it might need to, some doodads will need to be added in here in order to allow for an easier walling, in order to avoid the problems that bandwidth had. That was a standard finalist that had a problem with the natural wall off. When it comes to the map itself, the distance between the whoops. People don't like it when I use the measuring tool, guys. It is like alright, like having a 10% like failure rate with distances, it is still like kind of acceptable. But yeah, as you guys can see, the distance between the third base and the natural, even without like making this change, it is like slightly longer than might be recommended. Therefore, I will obviously advise to like move the third base like slightly front. I'm not sure why I was changing it to the back, but it should be changed forward slightly in order to like even further help correct that issue of the third being like slightly too hard. Maybe it could have like a set of rocks in here. The town hall will be like located around this area, and this is like an area open enough in order to like avoid too much problems. Maybe this mineral line will become like an horizontal one, and that will like as well very much help with the distances situation. Hopefully the hammering in the background isn't like all too annoying, given it's a neighbor trying to fix his roof. Oops, whoops. Anyhow, something like that. Obviously with a better mineral line setup. But yeah, continuing on. This Reaper jump pad is biting slightly bit too much into the third. It should be probably moved to the opposite side of it. All of these doodads, removing them. The third base also can be made like considerably more compact. It is obviously agreeable that Marras decided to use like standard mineral lines, but it is also important to understand that standard mineral lines can use like overly like considerable amount of space when situations such as this, it might not be the best decision. So here we can just go fix this, remove some doodads, make the oops, and push the mineral line even further against the cliff line, using like less space, being more efficient with it. Anyhow, all of that area will need to be obviously like dressed up again with doodads and whatnot. It can be like even further, like being made even more compact, something like this maybe. As you guys can see, it still works like rather well, and uses like slightly, it is like slightly more consistent with the space. When it comes to the rest of it, obviously always making sure that the mineral line can't be like occluded by the cliff line in the symmetrical other side of the map. When it comes to the rest of the map, there used to be like a small positioning here where cannon rushes could be like made two pylon cannon rushes in the main base. This is obviously some people like all over Reddit are reading about it, so that's something that obviously we need to take care of. I like to call them like Gemini cannon rushes, or like main base cliffline cannon rushes, because they are caused by our pretty cliff lines. Like I very much enjoy like this type of cliff line aesthetically. Maps done by ICL, all maps done by like etc. And but yeah, this is something that I'm not sure if we can like continue affording to do all the time. Like it is alright if it's like if there is like one in this case, or around the alternative other side of the main base. But it is not something that can be done like all the time, especially because people are like oversensitive about cannon rushes currently. So it's something to very much keep in mind. This natural base is like looking like very nice. When it comes to the rest of the map, the rest of the layout, all of these spaces are like very well positioned. The spacing is like very good. One thing that I wanted to mention as well is that these small high grounds, I consider them to be like slightly too big actually. So maybe something like that, just adding little trees that might still make it like visually distinctive that it is an obstacle, but it doesn't bite too much space, too much playable space. Same with this one. Let's fix it. Let's do like small little, okay, something like that. Avex like it to call them like Kantu Kantu trees, because they're like I'm always like I'm always like was using them constantly. These small little overlord pods are like enough. So therefore I don't consider this to be like too much of a priority. Though if Maras wants, she can add some invisible line of sight blockers, or some like standard colored line of sight blockers around it with like unpathable area around it, in order to make sure that it still will work as a pod, but without the problem of it using like slightly too much space. Watch out for that, because that's a very small like difference in space. Especially I'm concerned about this choke point that existed here. But anyhow, when it comes to this, Marras was obviously by the existence of these rocks, she was concerned about pushes going downwards from the central high ground toward the third. I don't think that is like too much of a problem in this situation, because this area is like open enough in order to set up like a defense. So therefore, and especially because of the new rocks that I would very recommend to be added in here in order to add like more accent to the map, these rocks could be like removed. Obviously, these rocks in here are reinforcing the concern that Marra had regarding these other rocks, the other 6x6 ones. So these rocks can obviously become a priority for the defending player, for the player that might have this base, to be taken down. So I don't consider that to be like too much of a problem, but I consider also to be like a concern, and something that players need to take into account, something to force players into thinking more about the strategics of the map. This pathway isn't like all too interesting, especially given that there is like 2 ramps around this other area. I'm sorry, I needed to move a little bit. My legs were getting like asleep. I won't advocate to do something like this, but that might be an option if Marras wants to do it. Obviously, like line of sight blockers, Avex really loves them. I think that whoops, I think that something like this might not be like too bad. Just a small like line in order to like further accent. Obviously not that reaches from one side to the other of the little trees, but something small like that in order to like further accent the vision play and the players like fighting for vision in this area. I think that is basically it. I was particularly interested. We had like lots of maps which use like hyper rich bases. Hyper rich bases, obviously using the high rich Bespin geysers and the rich mineral patches. Those are most of basically all of those maps got like just dequalified simply because of the fact that rich bases alone, rich mineral bases are like a balance concern already, and adding the extra Bespin geyser is just like a killer to that. It becomes like too risky to have like such a base for like months on end in the ladder. So, but in this situation, because of the Bespin geyser, it's like curtailed behind these mineral patches. It isn't like that much of a balance problem. So that's obviously like a bonus. That's what redeems, at least from my perspective, some of the uninteresting factor of the feature being like used so late into the game. So yeah, I think that is basically it for Rest Calm by Marras. Some things to keep in mind. Yeah, no, we saw like a fair amount of maps on Marras, so congratulations to her. And yeah, hopefully see you guys in the next video. This was Rest Calm by Marras of the TeamLiquid Map Contest 12 of the Challenge 1 category. Hope to see you guys in the next video.